All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Wednesday. It's hump day, and I'm starting very late today, later than usual. For those who keep track of my start times, I was on Capitol Hill lobbying today in the morning for two pieces of legislation for Gaza to help the Gazan people. No surprise, they're working with my friends at Code Pink, and it's a great organization. Apparently, a number of them were arrested yesterday. I didn't get all the details, but it sounds pretty scary to be from my standpoint anyway. I was hoping, I wouldn't say hoping, but I was sort of thinking I would, rather than be lobbying this morning or whatever the right term is, talking to Congress members about Gaza and how we need to do something, anything to stop supporting the Israeli genocide. I thought maybe we would be talking about the, quote, big, beautiful bill, which it's not called that anymore. Apparently, Chuck Schumer did accomplish one thing in this congressional session. He managed to change the name of the bill. It's no longer the big, beautiful bill. It is just the bill, I guess, or it's just legislation. He didn't get anything really changed, any of the really horrible policies, the massive cuts to critical safety net programs. Those are still there. The cuts to tax rates, to taxes on the wealthy, those are still there. The increase in the Pentagon budget, that's still there. So Schumer didn't get any of that out of it or anything particularly good into it, but he did change the name. So I guess we give him a little bit of credit. I'll get into more about, that bill, what I did today, what's happening in Washington and around our nation. But first, let's go to Gaza, where the news is unremittingly grim. And I say that, I mean the headlines. There is scuttlebutt. There's talk that a ceasefire may be in the offing. I've heard that from more than one source. I hope it's true. But I'll believe it when I see it. Over 57,000 dead is the official count. We were in the 5,600s yesterday, mid 5,600s, jumping over 400 dead. And I think the reason for that, the reason for that is partly yesterday was a very, very, very deadly day. But it's also because there were a number of dead added to the count. So victims whose bodies were found yesterday were added to the massacre number, the number of people killed by Israel. But they weren't necessarily killed yesterday. In fact, a number were not. Their bodies were found. They were under the rubble. There were maybe deaths that had been previously undetermined with respect to the cause. Now the cause has been determined to be Israel. So we do see now a death count north of 57,012 Palestinians. And you can just again see the rubble, the children, the baby in the rubble, child in the rubble there. It's just so awful. Every day I talk about it, and every day I'm just absolutely horrified and just sickened by what's going on. And that just, is a knife in my heart. And it is hard to do this, every day come on, but I feel like I have an obligation to do it. I feel like it's what I have to do morally, internally, not necessarily for you, but I do it for me. I hope you get something out of it. I hope that you feel that this is worthwhile. If you do, please do like, please do share, please do subscribe if you haven't already done so. I do think there's real value to what we do, and I hope more people see Halitics, especially people who may be not really on the same page politically, at least not 100%, but are open-minded, are willing to reconsider some of their preconceived notions. That's what we do this. That's for whom we do this. And of course, the goal is ultimately real, meaningful political change. We asked the question, is Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party? Can Mamdani can Mamdaniism, I don't think that's a real word, but why not, defeat Trumpism? You have here, again, we gave you that number. What did I have? 5702 Gazans killed. That includes 142 people Tuesday. yesterday and another 223 previously killed victims. From March 18 through today, Trump and Netanyahu have killed at least 6,454 Gazans, including likely over 3,000 women and children. And I'm just going to consult my numbers again. I think I made one transposition error. So yeah, it's actually even worse than that, than the slide I put together shows with 50. Let me look at that. How did we get there? 57,012. I had 5606. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to keep these straight. I must have added wrong. There we go. 57,012 is the right number. There we go. 57,012 Gazans, according to Anadolu Ajansi, with 142 people Tuesday and another 223 previously killed victims who are not in the count. So just as horrific as it can be. Some news that might possibly suggest that, as I mentioned, there is this idea that a ceasefire is possible. Another Israeli soldier was killed yesterday. If the Israeli people start seeing their genocidal activities, the Netanyahu's government's, the Israeli military's genocidal acts as making them less safe, killing soldiers, maybe there'll be more pressure put on the Netanyahu government. But I note that there's a lot of pressure put on Netanyahu by the hostages' families, and the right wing in Israel has been completely resistant, has just simply disregarded every claim, every demand by the hostage families for a ceasefire, for negotiations, for peace, for trades. They just, we're not going to listen to you. We're not going to do it. We're going to do what we do, which is to kill and kill and kill again. But again, if you see Israeli soldiers killed, maybe that makes a difference. I also think the possibility of a real boycott where there's a significant reduction in the purchase of Israeli products, especially from Europe, which is, I believe, their biggest customer, their biggest export market. That could make a difference. Israeli farmers report growing distancing from their exports across Europe. So there are countries that are saying, we're not going to buy your product. We're just not going to do it. Maybe that'll make a difference. We can only hope. But it's only going to go so far. Any boycott by consumers, so the consumers, the people who go into the different supermarkets in Europe, they mention Aldi there. There's a bunch of them, Marks and Spencer in England. There's a French supermarket as well. Big, and these are all, continent-wide, big markets like Safeway is here. The consumers in those markets are often saying no to Israel, but the governments are not. So while individual consumers, some workers refuse to load the weapons, Israel's genocidal weapons, they won't load them. Some dock workers will not load those weapons onto ships. Some sailors don't want to sail the ships across the Mediterranean to where Israel can use them to kill Palestinians, innocent women, innocent children. But the governments seem pretty unmoved, pretty impervious to public opinion. So Europe discusses boycotting Israel while rushing to buy more Israeli weapons. And those defense exports are becoming increasingly important for Israel's economy. And this is partly driven by the Ukraine war, where there is a real fear that Russia could use Ukraine as a base for incursion into Central and Western Europe. Again, I think that's just crazy talk, but governments are afraid, people are afraid, and there's certainly a lot of money to be made from fear-mongering. If you're a defense contractor, if you're a defense purchaser, right? I mean, if you use these weapons in your own systems and you turn around and sell those systems to governments, you want people in the countries where you market your product to be terrified. They'll be more likely to buy those missiles, right? The surface-to-air missiles, the interceptors, the bombers, the demand for all of those will soar. People are afraid, terrified of Russia, no matter how badly Russia's military has been shown to be, substandard, barely able to defeat. I mean, they are able to defeat. Looks like they'll defeat Ukraine at some point, but I mean, at an extraordinary cost. But still, I mean, if you make weapons, you want to sell them, even if there's no real need for them. And that is what the weapons manufacturers in Europe, the weapons purchasers in Europe are doing, thereby driving up the sales of Israeli weapon systems. Any real value, any real benefit to the boycotts by European consumers of Israeli agricultural products is probably more than offset by what some European governments are doing when they purchase Israeli guns, Israeli bombs, Israeli missiles. There's an absolute, we've talked about this before, but I just cannot stress enough what Israel is doing. This is an absolute, it is absolutely shades of the Holocaust. There's no real distinction, moral distinction. What Haaretz reported is it's a killing field. IDF soldiers acknowledging they've been ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. And that's from an Israeli newspaper. Does Mamdaniism really want to bring this back to the way we can use politics to maybe stop this, right? I mean, I don't know what else can do it. Obviously, and I talked to people who said no, because I made the point, I thought, I was wrong about one thing. I thought Trump wouldn't be any worse than Harris Biden when it comes to the killing in Gaza. I think we talked about this with Carlos on Monday. He said he thinks they're the same. It's not going to draw a distinction. Maybe that's fair. I know a lot of people in the peace community don't draw a distinction. I know people in the peace community think Trump probably actually is more sincerely desirous of some kind of end to the killing than Harris Biden were. Maybe that's true. We don't know. There certainly isn't a good reason to believe it from his actions, is there? We can only hope in the end, maybe there'll be peace. One of the arguments I saw on my Facebook page when I posted that Haaretz article, in which the Israeli soldiers were quoted as saying, hey, we were told to fire at Gazans desperate for food. And I show this, say, this is our quote ally. This is how bad what we're doing is. Whereas the United States, we are supporting this country that fires at hungry people, desperate people. And somebody wrote back, well, that was a bad translation. Here is the actual translation. They were ordered to fire toward masses, not at people, to keep them away. And then they bring up the Hamas charter, which allegedly says that Israel should be eradicated, much like Israel is now destroying, ruining, wiping Gaza off the face of the earth. So I responded. I said, well, wait a sec. How is that exonerating? How is that making it okay? It's okay to fire toward masses congregating near sites to keep them away? Whatever their motive is, even if that is the motive, the end result is it's hundreds and hundreds of Gazans dead who were who were dying to get food. They literally died to get enough nutrients to survive. And I made this point, because I think this is what we have to get the Zionists to acknowledge. They're trying extra hard to excuse Israeli cruelty and murderousness and to condemn Israel's victims at every turn. You say the translation was bad. They weren't firing at them, but towards them, whatever the difference is. Haaretz is published jointly in English and Hebrew. The translation is from Haaretz. There's no reason to doubt its accuracy. And even if you believe your translation, it's hardly exculpatory. And then I point out that the translation of the Hamas charter that you rely on comes from this group, the Wilson Center, which is not credible. The Wilson Center publishes articles that are touting cryptocurrency as the money of the future, and they count Nina Jankowicz, who is a propagandist who worked with the Ukraine government to promote anti-Russian hysteria throughout Ukraine. And she's been, found to have been a fabulist, someone who made things up. Whatever you think of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, whether you agree or disagree with Ukraine's position, and you think Russia's wholly to blame, Jankowicz still was making things up. She was lying about Russia. And therefore, she has no credibility when it comes to, or at least this group, Wilson Center, that touts Jankowicz as one of their contributors, has very little credibility when it claims to know just what the Hamas charter says. Right, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I do want to give a little bit of credit to Chris Van Hollen. I think he's one of the better, I don't want to say best, he's a better than average Democrat by a significant margin, and he has been one of the few to be consistent against the genocide. Now, Carlos made the point, Van Hollen still voted for a number of bills that distributed weapons to Israel, and he's right, and that's not okay. But nevertheless, Van Hollen has, on balance, spoken out against Israel. He has voted for legislation to stop supplying Israel. I think that he, at least in contrast to the other Democrats in the Senate, is less awful. He really is. He sucks less. He sucks less. Before I went downtown this morning, I said I would talk a little bit about this big Trump bill, this big crappy bill. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. The question I asked was, can Mamdaniism defeat Maga? So Maga is reflected, the power of Maga, the power of Trump, the power of Trump's working class coalition, and the harm that it does, the harm that it's doing that will hurt the very voters, the very MAGA voters who put Trump over the top. And I'm not going to condemn them for voting for Trump, because the alternative was, from their standpoint, equally as bad or maybe even worse. But by championing, by pushing this legislation, Trump is giving an enormous opportunity, an enormous political opportunity to the Democratic Party, to the opponents of Trumpism. Want to bet they'll squander it, they'll flunk it, they'll fail to take advantage of that opportunity? There's almost no question about it. We're already seeing their attacks on Mamdani as proof that they don't want to win. They don't want a populist agenda. They don't want to embrace popular policies. It's sad, because if they did, we have a real opportunity to take back power, to claw back power from the billionaire class. And you look at this, just incredibly unpopular policies by Trump. So massive tax cut extensions. These tax cut extensions are almost completely for the super rich, right? So they're going to raise the estate tax exemption to $15 million, and it will continue to rise. Apparently, 0.2% of Americans die with $15 million, 0.2%. So 2 out of every 1,000 Americans, it may even be less than that. That even seems a little high. I think I heard 2%? 0.2%. So if it's 0.2%, that's 2 out of every 1,000 Americans have an estate when they die valued at $15 million. So this is a tax cut that goes only to this tiny little layer of people, the heirs of a tiny little group of people at the top. There's other tax cuts mainly for the rich. There's a few, that are better, right? Like the no tax on tips and other policies. But on balance, the almost entirely, the $4 trillion plus in tax cut extension, the great majority is going to the richest Americans. There are also going to be increases in, and that's going to cost, right? Those cuts are massive drivers of a ginormous budget deficit increase. We already have a big deficit. This will just increase it even more, and the debt obviously will explode. Also, major increases in the defense spending, homeland security, immigration. These are all going to cost us more money. On the other hand, there's going to be giant cuts. That's where the savings come in at the bottom of your screen. Medicaid, over $1 trillion. So what is that? Healthcare for poor people. Now they're going to be, I heard this, by the way, I want to thank the Young Turks for making this point. I think it was the Young Turks. No, it was Bernie. It was Bernie Sanders. $35 copay now. That's a lot. For very poor people, that $35 means a lot. They're not going to seek medical treatment when they need it as a result. Major cuts to green environmental programs. That in the end will cost us more money because it will just exacerbate the climate catastrophe, which is costing us all billions and billions of dollars in remediation efforts, in responses to extreme weather events, increased electric costs from air conditioning running more frequently at higher levels. So this is just an utter travesty. This bill is the absolute opposite of what government should be doing, which is protecting the powerless and afflicting the powerful. It does just the opposite. Cuts food stamps, cuts the SNAP, cuts student loans. In every way, this bill is a nightmare. Now, but that provides a real opportunity for Democrats. It means that they can, if they choose, as a party, to embrace genuine populist economic policies and call out Trump for betraying his base, for betraying working people. But that would require Democrats themselves to embrace workers and to forsake the billionaire class that they're tight with, that they're cozy with. Can't see it happening. Mamdaniism says you do that. Mamdaniism says that you say, no, we're not going to coddle billionaires. But that's not what the Democratic Party says. That's not what the Democratic Party wants. Here's the answer. Let's go to Mamdani. This is the answer. And I just really, really hope he never mutes this message. We're going to, at least the message we're going to play in a minute. There's another clip that's been making the rounds. It hasn't gotten as much attention except on the far right fringes as I thought it might. But I want to play it because I think it matters. This relates to the issue of seizing the means of production. But here, let's start with Meet the Press over the weekend.
Because frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality, and ultimately,
let me start it.
To change that language on your website.
The focus here is to actually ensure a fair property tax system, and that the use of that language is just an assessment of the neighborhood.
All right, you are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I want to just stop this because that question is such a sleazy, low rent. Do they have a right to exist? They're human beings. So yeah, human beings have a right to exist. But he rephrases it. And see, of course, the question is designed to say, well, are you going to just kill? Do you support a genocide of billionaires? Actually, the person I had lunch with today said, yeah, that's how it's being framed, is that Mamdani wants to kill billionaires, right? That's how they're trying to frame it. And it's really a very poor framing. The goal here is to embarrass Mamdani, right? To make him look like he's some extremist, he's a radical. But if he said, yeah, we need to start killing some of these billionaires, I don't know how much popularity that could backfire bigly on the elites, because look at how much popularity Luigi Mangione got after killing not even a billionaire, just the CEO of a healthcare company. And I think those are the elites, the 1%ers who are hated the most, are the people associated with the healthcare executives. But that said, there's a lot of Americans right now who have no problem. Really, I'm serious about this. There's a lot of Americans who have no problem with violence against the rich. None at all. And I've talked to some people about this, and it really upsets them. Well, how can they feel that way? It's fine. Society is unfair. I get that. But to think it's okay to shoot someone in broad daylight. And that is such in my opinion, a complete misreading of the mood of the situation. The real outrage shouldn't be at the very understandable desire that so many Americans have, that the billionaire class and their apparatchiks, that they feel some pain. That's totally understandable. That's human nature. There's no reason to be upset at that. The reason to be upset is that tens of millions of Americans barely can get health care when they need it. And if they can get it, they often have to go into serious debt. Some have to go bankrupt. Some don't get health care and they die. That's where your outrage should be. Not that working people take a real delight in the death of one man whose policies have hurt them. Nor should you be wringing your hands over the claim, the policy prescription of Zoran Mamdani that no, there shouldn't be billionaires. It's not that they shouldn't exist. Exactly. They're human beings. They're human beings who should exist, but without $1 billion. Let's hear him explain more.
Because frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of them.
Well,
I just don't know how there's anything even the remotest bit controversial or politically unpalatable about that statement. That's where most Americans are. The great majority of Americans don't think there should be billionaires. The great majority of Americans believe that the tax rate on, past the first 10, 15, $20 million should be at nearly confiscatory rates, as it was, from the 30s through the early 1960s. That's where most of us are. And that's where Zoran Mamdani is. But you know who isn't there? The media. The Democratic Party elites. Obviously the Republican Party. That's not who's there. This is the opportunity that the Democratic Party has. And when it doesn't take that opportunity, we must use it to build a third party, to stand up a Green Party that will, in fact, fight for us. It seems to be the only possible solution that I see to the terrible, terrible situations we live in right now. All right, 240-242-5646. I wasn't going to play this at this point, but let me just play it because we're talking about inequality. We're talking about equality. By the way, call me 240-242-5646 if you want to talk to me. 240-242-5646 if you'd like to get involved in this conversation. But yeah, Mamdani talking about equality, inequality. And again, I think that statement he said is not only unexceptional, that there shouldn't be billionaires, but it's a popular position. It's a position that should win him many votes. And if it were a position that the Democratic Party embraced, that said, yeah, this is part of what we're about as Democrats, is making sure everyone has enough and no one has too much. If that were a position the Democratic Party took, they would be a majority party for a very long time. Here's from Carmen in Facebook. Hi, Al. Is there any possibility that reports that Iran has breached Israel's Golden Dome defense system, resulting in significant damage within Israel, will have a negative impact on Israeli weapon sales? All right, so that's a really interesting question, Carmen. I don't really have a good answer to that. I mean, I don't really know. I would guess no, and I'll tell you why. My understanding is that Golden Dome actually worked quite well. And Golden Dome is supported in large part by the United States. The problem, and I thought where you were going with this, so I'd say no, the Golden Dome was very effective and Israel suffered far less damage, although some damage, more than I think people expected. They did suffer damage. Iran missiles got through and Israelis were killed. Israelis were injured. Israel suffered damage as a result of the Iranian response. Now, it wasn't anywhere near at the same level as the damage that Israel inflicted. And of course, Israel was the aggressor, not Iran. But Israel did not emerge unscathed. I think one of the takeaways that at least some observers had was that Trump's push for a ceasefire with Iran was actually welcomed by Netanyahu because Israel was close to the end of its tether. It was running out of anti-missile defense and was likely to very shortly get really hammered. So take that for what it's worth. I think the real problem, Carmen, that Israel faced wasn't that the anti-missile defense systems didn't work well or didn't even work as well as they were expected to work. They did work well, but Israel was running out of the supplies it needed. It was running out of the anti-missile intervention missiles because they send missiles out to intervene with the other missiles. So no, I don't think it would hurt Israel's weapon sales. I hope that answers your question. But again, I'm not an expert and I would stand corrected at any point by anybody who wants to weigh in and obviously knows more about this than I do. I want to play this clip. This is from 4 years ago and the right is really making a lot of hay with this. And I thought, well, maybe I should. And there was some question whether it could have been AI generated. I don't think so. I'm taking this from the Young Democratic Socialists of America page. They had Mamdani as their speaker. I think he had just been elected to his first term as Queen's Assembly, state assembly member. So let's play a little bit of this and we'll get to a statement which even I, as far to the left as I am, of course I'm going to vote for Mamdani. And in fact, the statement would make me more inclined, if anything, to vote for him. But I think it reflects a viewpoint that he may no longer have, I don't know, and maybe is a little further to the left than is ideal if we had a relatively fair and just system. But let me play this.
By conviction. And what I mean by that is that the many things that we believe, some of them are already popular in this moment right now, right? If we're talking about the cancellation of student debt, if we're talking about Medicare for all, these are issues which have the groundswell of popular support across this country. But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right? Or whether it is the end goal of seizing the means of production.
I want to stop that BDS for a second. So boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. And he's absolutely right. This was in he was saying at that time, the American public are not banned. Yes, they're behind canceling student debt. Yes, they're for Medicare for all, which is true and was true in 21, but not necessarily the case when it comes to boycott, divestment, and sanctions. At that time, Mamdani is saying, a young Mamdani is saying, well, and by the way, again, there was a question in my mind even, could this be AI generated? Because if you look at the background, I guess that was just whatever his Zoom background was. But since this was posted at the YDSA, Young Democratic Socialists of America Winter Conference, I'm going to take the position this is not AI. This is really Zoran's views as expressed. And yeah, he's right. BDS wasn't popular then, but it is, and we'll see a clip. It is popular. People are coming to Mamdani rather than the other way around, which really shows what a leader he is and that some of his DSA positions are. So he's saying BDS, popular, less popular then, more popular now. Let me play a little more.
Is that we are fighting for. And to remember that our agenda is an agenda that must not be dictated by calculus, but by conviction. And what I mean by that is that the many things that we believe, some of them are already popular in this moment right now, right? If we're talking about the cancellation of student debt, if we're talking about Medicare for all, these are issues which have the groundswell of popular support across this country. But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right? Or whether it is the end goal of seizing the means of production.
So that's the phrase that's really getting a lot of play, right? Where he says, seizing the means of production, the end goal. And that Lindy Lee, who's a right-winger, she was on, I think it was Piers Morgan, she and Jan Guger argued about that phrase. It had just come out, this video that Mamdani had said that. And I guess no one had found it, right? Nobody had unearthed this, which is another reason. I mean, I'm going to assume for the purposes of this conversation, that's not AI generated. I've not heard it was AI generated. I haven't heard Mamdani disavow it. I don't know. I hope if he did say it, he comes around and says, oh yeah, I said that. I said it. And, look, I do believe in private property. I think that the means of production, that was used kind of like by Marx to refer to tools, right? Like if you're a workman, if you're a artisan, then you have means that you use, your tools, basically. If you're a blacksmith and you shoe horses, well, you have your hammer and you have your nails and you have the shoes. Those are your property that you sell, right? Or you use to shoe the horse and to do, the bellows, the little foundry where you heat up the steel and the iron to make into the horseshoes. So he's saying, what Mamdani is saying is, hey, when it comes to factories, when it comes to businesses, they should be, at least some of them, we should seize. And I have an issue with that, but I would reframe it this way. I would say, well, I don't know that we should seize as the people Amazon and own Amazon. What we should do is break it up into constituent parts, have lots of smaller companies. They might still be quite large, but they compete aggressively with each other on price, on services, on what they sell. That would be what they manufacture, different companies, rather than having just a few giant companies worldwide. So I would prefer to see government pursue antitrust actions, break up companies. That said, there are certainly times when it makes sense, especially in our fraught economic circumstances, at least fraught for so many millions of people, tens of millions, billions of people, where the government should own at least some means of production. And, Mamdani talks about state-owned, city-owned grocery stores. Well, that's owning the means of production, right? I mean, the grocery store is a business, and it produces, food. It doesn't necessarily produce the food exactly, but it provides a place, a marketplace where people can purchase nutrition. So I get the argument, right, that we do need places that are government run. The post office, that is a government run business, or government run service. It's kind of like a business, it's the same thing. But still, the phrase means of production, seizing the means of production, has a certain communist whiff to it because it's saying, hey, we don't have private property. The people own the factories. The people own the tools. And I'm kind of mixed on that one. I don't love that notion. I do believe there's a role for a private sector. That said, of course I would vote for Mamdani. This would never stop me from voting for him. We've gone so far in the other direction in terms of everything is privately owned. We've socialized. We have socialism for the rich, where the billionaire class gets bailed out and poor struggling working people are on their own. So obviously we want to redress that. And I love the idea of an aggressive, hard left mayor who is talking about much greater involvement of the government in economics to make sure the playing field is level, or at least fair, at least to make sure everyone has enough and no one has too much. The idea that government will own grocery stores, for which he's been really mocked, is absurd that he would be mocked for it. We've already seen it. Here's what Food Environment Reporting Network is telling us. There already are government-owned grocery stores. Madison, Wisconsin is opening a city-owned grocery store in an area where there's no other grocery stores. Atlanta is set to open 2. Chicago's opening a city-run market. Kansas already has, in Erie, a city-owned market. And there's other Kansas towns as well. So the Republican, the blood red state of Kansas, has some city-owned markets. There's just nothing extreme about it. Buses, right? Transit. Public transit, that's where the city owns, or the state or the county owns the means of production. He's getting a lot of criticism, Mamdani, for calling for free bus service in New York City. Well, my county, Montgomery County, just made bus rides free. How is this some crazy left-wing extremist idea? It isn't. And that's a perfect example. Again, not only there's a means of production publicly owned, but it's made free. So these are not particularly radical or extreme ideas. I do think they could be taken too far, but we've gone so far in the other direction that I welcome an aggressive leftist who's going to push the envelope, or going to try to push it maybe a little bit in the other direction. Take the billionaire class. First of all, hopefully eliminate that class, not by killing them, not by saying they don't get to exist as human beings. You just don't get to have $1 billion in their pockets. Seems just beyond peradventure. If the Democratic Party would, now they can, clip this around the edges. They don't have to embrace. And I don't think Mamdani in 2025, that's something he said in 2021 at a DSA event where he was a guest speaker. It was 4 years ago. His positions have probably evolved. He did say that this is what we believe in owning the means of production. He could come back and say, yeah, I do believe in many areas government needs to be much more involved, and indeed to own businesses, to own, we already do, transit being a perfect example. But yeah, would I say that that's a universal solution for all of our problems? No. Yes, we need city-owned grocery stores, but we also should welcome privately owned grocery stores so long as there's real, genuine competition between various competitors to keep prices low and services high. That seems to me, again, not anything beyond what most Americans believe. Now, I mentioned that America, not only, Mamdani acknowledged some of his positions aren't that popular in 21, but also that people were that they could become popular, that they could become the norm. And here's Harry Enton from CNN explaining that perfectly. He got a lot of pushback. You can see this is not what the CNN producers want Harry Enton to be telling them.
This morning, Zohran Mamdani is officially the Democratic nominee for New York City mayor, and he's now facing new attacks from President Trump. The president is now threatening to arrest Mamdani if he blocks immigration arrests in New York City, something that Mamdani has promised to do. But there is a lot more questions about, as he is now continuing to campaign, that Mamdani is also facing continued and serious questions about his stance on Israel. CNN's Harry Enton is joining me now and is running the numbers on this, taking this and looking also more broadly. So
I want to just stop it for a second. So, yeah, according to the woman there, whose name I don't know what it is, she's saying, yeah, he's facing a lot of criticism. There's a lot of challenge to Mamdani on his views about Israel. And you can see there's an Israeli flag. But to be fair, they also put the Palestinian flag there, so I won't complain about that. Let me play the clip.
The broader views in Democratic politics specifically also speak to what's going on with Mamdani and this race for mayor in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely true. I mean, look, Andrew Cuomo during the primary attacked Mamdani as being insufficiently pro-Israel. I'm not quite sure the former governor understood how much the politics have changed around this issue among Democrats. What are we talking about here? All right, who Democrats?
So remember, she said that there was a lot of pushback, that Mamdani was getting a lot of criticism for his views on Israel. Hey, I'm not going to go. What were his views? I'm not going to go to Israel. I'm the mayor of New York. No, I'm not going to go to Israel. Yes, Israel has a right to exist as a state with equal rights, where everyone in the country has equal political rights. Gee, wow, what an extreme position. How dare he think that? I mean, again, these are just totally mainstream, middle-of-the-road views. They're not radical in any way. Yeah, I played the seizing the means of production. That's more radical. And again, I think he would pull back a little bit on it, but also I would hope he wouldn't renounce it either. Just say, yeah, in some areas the private sector works, but we absolutely need much more government involvement as well. And we need more public sector involvement as well in areas where people's lives are at stake. When it comes to housing, the private sector is not doing the job we need it to do. It is not providing sufficient affordable housing for the people in the city of New York. It's just not doing it. It's clear. We do need the government to step in, and I have a variety of different proposals. And is this seizing the means of production? Well, we're saying, hey, we'll have government housing. We're going to build more housing for people, and it'll be better than in the past. It'll be safer. It'll be, higher quality. And we're also going to impose rent freezes for now, because otherwise the city will become completely unaffordable for any middle class person. So again, not particularly radical views. What about the views that this host says, oh, he's getting so much criticism, so much pushback on Israel? Well, look at that. Democrats, and this isn't just New York City, Democrats over the past 8 years have shifted 56 points in favor of Palestinians. Harriet saying, hey, maybe that criticism of Mamdani, the heat Mamdani has taken, is very ill-placed. And those who are laying the heat on him are making a big, big mistake.
Size more with Israelis or Palestinians. In 2017, the Democratic Party was a pro-Israeli party. Look at this. They sympathized with the Israelis by 13 points, more with the Israelis than the Palestinians. But look at this sea change. Now Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians by 43 points. Oh my God, that is a change in the margin of 56 points over the course of just 8 years. So all of a sudden, it's the pro-Palestinian position that actually reigns supreme in Democratic politics, not the Israeli position. And that is part of the reason why Mamdani was able to do so well in this primary, because those attacks over Israel, simply put, did not ring true for Democrats. They're now on the side of the Palestinians, not the Israelis.
So again, the concern the host expressed that, oh, well, he's getting a lot of heat. He's taking a lot of criticism for his position on Israel. And saying, no, he's where the Democratic voters are. Actually, the Democratic Party constituencies have come to Mamdani. They have left the Schumers. They have left the Hakeem Jeffries. They have left the Andrew Cuomos. And I don't know why I do know why, because CNN gets a lot of money from the military-industrial complex, and they're owned by billionaires, and presumably they support Israel. But there can be no doubt that Mamdaniism, which is actually far from radical, far from some crazy, hard Palestinian position, but simply, hey, yeah, Jews get to be safe in New York City. There is hate, and we're going to fight it. We're going to stop it. We're going to stop hate crime, period, wherever it is. And no, I'm not going to go to Israel. And yes, I will enforce. I would have Netanyahu arrested if he comes to New York City, because that's what the World Court, that's what the International Criminal Court wants. And what he's doing to Palestine is a genocide. And guess what? Most Democrats are with him. This is the future of the Democratic Party if the Democrats are smart enough to embrace it. I won't even say that. It's not a question of being smart enough. If they're willing to just be a little less corrupt. If Democratic leadership is willing to just for a moment think about poor, struggling, and working people and put aside the billionaires that fund them, will they do that? No, they won't. So it's not a question of being intelligent. They're shrewd. They're canny. They've got theirs. They just don't want to share it with you.
This is a much bigger issue, specifically with Mamdani, though. I mean, an outspoken critic of Israel. He's facing continued...
Look at how she's so upset by this. Look at her. Oh, he's an outspoken critic of Israel. Well, look at the Democratic Party voters. 43% of them prefer Palestine to Israel. Isn't that criticizing Israel? Isn't that crazy? She's like, oh, it's so much more than this. It's not just that Mamdani's pro-Palestine. It's much more. He's also critical of Israel. Well, Israel's killing Palestine. So, of course, they're going to be critical. If you're pro-Palestine, you're not going to like the people who are trying to kill you, who are killing you.
Much bigger issue, specifically with Mamdani, though. I mean, an outspoken critic of Israel. He's facing continued criticism, though, for not being outspoken enough against anti-Semitism, that is for sure. But
he's been very outspoken, as a matter of fact. I think he's been too outspoken. We've already played the clips where he said, yes, it's a problem. Yes, I want more money for hate crime, anti-hate crime activities, prosecutions, education. So what is she talking about? It's just, she's got marching orders, right? You've got to smear Mamdani any way possible. The problem is the smears are a major fail because most Americans agree with Mamdani and they're not buying this nonsense.
On this, talk about Democrats and how broadly how this really is shifting.
Yeah,
she's trying so hard to figure out how can you smear Mamdani? How can you make him look bad? It goes way beyond public opinion. And then she can't frame it in a way. She knows there's no way I can frame this to make Mamdani look bad. And Enton's going to make him look even better now.
You see this among Democrats overall, right? But we know that Mamdani's base was younger voters within the Democratic Party.
So I guess what he's saying is, hey, that's 43 points for greater support for Palestine than for Israel among all Democrats. So, yeah, the people who criticize him, the Cuomos, the Jeffries, the Kirsten Gillibrand, right, just smearing him, saying, oh, well, he said globalize the intifada, which he didn't say. He just said, he said, I don't use that phrase, but all it means is uprising. It's understandable why people would use it. It was used by the Holocaust Museum to describe what the Warsaw Jews did when they rose up against the Nazis in the ghetto. So, yeah. Globalize the intifada. I'm not going to condemn it. Sorry, won't do it. It's not going to happen. And of course, Kirsten Gillibrand trying desperately to smear him for that. And the host here, the woman, is saying, oh, you got to look at how bad he's rightly getting criticized for it. Tell us a little bit more about where the Democrats are. Well, 43% pro-Palestine, 43 points for Palestine. I think it's pretty hard to say, yeah, Gillibrand is on brand. Is on Democratic brand. She's on elite corporate establishment, corrupt Democratic brand. But here's what Enton has to say.
With younger Democrats.
Correct.
Younger. So 57% more young Democrats agree with Mamdani. So if I do my math, that tells me that there are 20% of Democrats prefer Israel to Palestine, and 77% prefer Palestine to Israel. 77% versus 20%. That's a almost 4-to-1 swing for Palestine. This should be the future of the Democratic Party if they would embrace it. I mean, this is despite all 18 to 49. So it's not just super young Dems. This goes up to 49 years old. If the Democratic Party cared about winning elections, if it cared about fighting for working people, they would embrace Mamdaniism in a heartbeat. That's not their priority. Their priority is to feather their own nest. Their priority is to keep their own taxes low. Their priority is to get golden parachutes so that they can get 7+ figure jobs when they leave Congress. You got to decide, do you want to support those people? Is that who you're going to vote for? People like that? I sure as hell ain't. All right, 240-242-5646. I got another clip here, but, well, yeah, I guess I have a few more minutes, right? So let's play this. This is Jimmy Dore. And I was going to play a clip from a New York Times columnist, Jamel Bowie, not one of my favorites. I have a lot of problems with Bowie. He keeps for the establishment. And I don't like his clip particularly, but he has some relatively sort of smart things, I think, to say about Mamdani. But I'm not going to play it now, maybe tomorrow, because I'd rather go to Jimmy Dore and how Jimmy Dore, as much, and this is the thing, this is where I think so many people have a real problem recognizing that people are complex. There is, yes, I absolutely believe there's a right and wrong, without question. For example, Israel is simply flat out wrong in what they're doing to Gaza. That's just wrong. There's no way to justify it. Our support for Israel is wrong. That's just wrong. There's no two sides to it. There's no way to spin it. And there's right too, correct? Medicare for all is right. That's the answer. Every American, every human being deserves healthcare as a human right. So there are rights and wrongs. But there are very few people who are always right or always wrong. Most of us are right sometimes and wrong sometimes. Most of us get some things wildly incorrectly and others we get right. And Jimmy Dore, who's always getting smeared by the left because he's done some tremendous work, because of the great work he did, smeared by Democrats, exposing the extraordinary corruption of the Democratic leadership class. And he was just right. He's been right. But he's wrong. So wrong in this clip. And I don't know whether, I mean, I have no excuse for him. Some people would say that it's audience capture. And I think that's part of it. I think there are some of his audience are really conspiracy people, and they don't believe anything that, quote, elites, unquote, tell them. And they believe everything they read, everything they hear, if it's from any kind of mainstream media or anyone they just don't trust for whatever reason, they're going to believe it's made up, it's fake, it's fabricated. And I think that's a significant part of his audience. And those people don't believe in the human-caused climate catastrophe, no matter how powerful the evidence is, no matter how hot it gets, they're not going to believe it. So I think this is, to a degree, Jimmy talking to them. I think it's also Jimmy so fired up, angry, burnt out at the, quote, establishment elites. He views them as the ones who are promoting, maybe, the theory of anthropogenic global warming, the theory that we now live in the Anthropocene age, the age of man. He may just say, you know, I had enough of these people, these Democrats who, even though the scientists have nothing to do with CNN and MSNBC and the Center for American Progress, who are the people who have smeared Jimmy. They have nothing to do with it. Neera Tanden, one of his greatest enemies, she's got nothing to do with global warming. So there's a lot of factors here. Maybe Jimmy's just not that smart. I don't think he is that smart. He said it's just a jag-off comedian. So maybe he doesn't really understand it. He gets this so completely wrong.
Italy. He says, here's how the elites are partying by flying 90 private jets to Italy to attend Jeff Bezos' $50 to $100 million wedding. All of them so-called climate change activists living like there's...
I don't see, that's a lie, right? These people aren't climate change. Jeff Bezos is no climate change activist. He may acknowledge climate change is real, that human-caused global warming is real. He's certainly not associated in any way with the movement for clean, green energy to end our dependence or our consumption of fossil fuels. He's not part of that. So right there, Jimmy's just wrong. But let's play a little bit more.
Tomorrow, hypocrites, every one of them. So
exactly.
They are hypocrites. He's right. If you say there's a terrible problem with the environment, And yet you're out there flying private jets all over the planet? Of course. You're a total hypocrite. But are you wrong because you're flying a private jet? Or are you wrong because you're saying there's climate crisis? Well, you're not wrong to say there's a climate crisis. There is. What you're wrong is to fly to be in that private jet. Jimmy completely misses the thread here.
There he is, right there, getting in his. So I've always said this. One private jet flight burns more carbon than my car does in my whole lifetime. And Jeff Bezos.
So it's true. Jets are really bad. Jet fuel is really bad. Free trade is really bad for the environment. Cars are bad too. But yes, one jet is worse than one car, of course. Okay, we got it, Jimmy. But listen to where he goes with this. It's just absurd.
Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, they all fly around the world in their private jets. They all have 400 or 500-foot yachts powered by 5-6 diesel engines for their leisure. And yet they want us all living in storage containers in 15-minute ghettos, driving electric scooters, eating the bugs.
Well, I'm not aware of any of that. Where is he getting that from? I haven't heard any of these billionaires saying we want to impoverish. I mean, there's no question we have, we consume as a species far more than we should. And there's no question that the billionaires are trying to keep as much for themselves and keep adding and adding and adding to their store of their wealth while making sure nobody else has very much. That's true. I agree with you there, Jimmy. But they're not talking about putting people in hovels. That's not true. And it's also, again, irrelevant. What you should be saying is we need to redistribute all that wealth. We need to take the billions from the billionaires and make sure everyone has enough, and also take away their ability to destroy the planet. Your point is just, it's crazy here. He's seeming to say that because the billionaires are flying jets, climate crisis isn't happening.
Face. Yeah. And this is a perfect example of that. So open-minded approach makes a great point. Why are they hypocrites? Why do they do things that they claim are harmful to the climate, such as flying around in private jets? Because they know the truth. Climate change is not primarily caused by humans, but by the sun, the magnetic field, and the ongoing
that's where he comes right out and he says, oh, well, if Jeff Bezos flies a private jet, then that proves the climate crisis isn't happening. What a completely unjustifiable leap. What a complete crazy, jump to a conclusion that is unwarranted. People are hypocrites all the time. People say they're for peace and then they kill people. Does that mean peace is a bad thing? It's crazy. Of course they're flying their private jets because it's easy. It's nice for them. It's more pleasant. Do you want to go wait in an airport and have to sit and even if you get to go to a lounge, like a first class lounge, it's still not that great. So of course they're going to fly their private jets wherever they can. That doesn't mean that they don't believe the climate crisis is real. And even if they don't believe it's real, so what? It still is real. There's no evidence that you've adduced, Jimmy, in your little diatribe there that in any way weakens the global warming theory. The proof is in the charts, the very, very close correlation over not just decades, not just centuries, not just millennia, but actually eras, eons, millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. Scientists can prove that the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere correlates very, very closely with the temperatures on the planet. Okay, let me repeat that again. What study after study has shown through through fossil data, through fossil examination, through carbon data, what it has shown through temperature records in recent times, through glacier records from recent times, what they all show is that the higher the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the higher the temperatures on Earth. And this has been documented with remarkable accuracy and precision since the end of the 19th century. As we burn more and more coal and petroleum, we inject more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And the direct consequences of that is hotter and hotter temperatures. So, Jimmy, you're completely wrong here, and you're doing a terrible disservice. And you're an influencer because you have like 1 million plus subscribers. I get it, though. A lot of those subscribers are real conspiracy people because you'll tell them, oh, the Democratic Party is against you. The Democratic Party leadership, they tell their, they tell Jamie Raskin or they tell, Jayapal, you can vote no on this bill, but then we need you to vote yes. And all that's true. They are liars, the Democratic Party. They are against you. But that doesn't mean that the climate crisis, the climate human-caused catastrophe isn't completely real. And you haven't presented a scintilla of evidence that it isn't to contradict the overwhelming proof that it is. So I don't know what to do with this. I mean, you've got a guy who's done a lot of good. He's really exposed the corrupt Democratic Party, but then he does this kind of crap. And it's just, it's another thing, it's heartbreaking for me. Somebody I really used to look up to, really, really thought highly of Jimmy Dore. I thought, wow, this guy's got some guts. Remember, man, he said, hey, he was right on when he talked about forcing the vote. He nailed that. And he took a lot of heat. A lot of people went after him, right? Just about everyone did. He was right. So I had so much respect for this guy, a lot of guts. But here he's captured by God knows who. And he's just completely misses the boat. And rather than, because my whole take has always been, I'll vote for people, I'll support people if they're going to make things better. If on balance, they're good. And when Jimmy does that stuff, I can't say it. Can't say he's on balance good. It's close because he does still, he's still pro-peace. And war is a terrible, terrible thing for the environment, among other things, for human life. But yeah, it's a bad thing that Jimmy's doing there. A really, really, really bad thing. I'll be back tomorrow. Yeah, I'll try to get you the Bowie tape and the Bowie clip, and we'll have lots of other great topics for you.